Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this webinar presented by Convergia, Silver, and Future Electronics. Our speakers today are going to be Patrick Duran, Worldwide Technical Director for Future Electronics, being helped in the Spanish side by Roberto Espinosa, Future Lighting Solutions Executive for LATAM from Future Electronics. We're going to have a 30-minute presentation about Bluetooth mesh lighting control. And after that, we will have a round of questions and answers. Rogelio is our moderator, so you may type all your questions and then we will see them after the presentation. Thank you very much for joining us. And Patrick, I pass it on to you.
All right, thank you very much. So we're here to talk about how we can simplify Bluetooth mesh, both in terms of a concept, in terms of how it works, but also in real practical terms, in the sense that how do you actually go and commission a Bluetooth mesh project? And what I want to convey to everybody on this call is that it does not have to be complex. In fact, with Bluetooth mesh, it's quite simple to do a very small project to a medium project to even large projects, where Bluetooth mesh will absolutely save a significant amount of money and time when implementing a project. And so what do we all want from a lighting control system? Well, we want it to be basic and simple and straightforward. And that's what Bluetooth mesh provides. And basically, you can have an app or you can have a switch, and that switch will directly communicate to the controller that will provide the signal to the LED driver to tell it to turn on, off, or to dim to a certain level. If there is an external sensor, the sensor will directly communicate to the controller that will tell the LED driver to turn on, off, or dim. Or you can have a combination in fixture sensor controller that will tell the LED driver to turn on, off, or dim. We now even have wireless LED drivers that can tell itself to turn on, off, or dim. And so what is lighting control? Well, actually, there's no such thing as lighting control because you're not controlling the lights. In essence, it's LED driver control because that's where you are providing the signal to tell the driver to reduce the current or to turn on the driver, etc. Now, this is quite straightforward, but the reason why there's so much apprehension or concerns about lighting control because the feeling is that it's very complex. Well, that stems from older technologies from Zigbee, where you need a gateway to enable lighting control. And with Bluetooth mesh, you do not need a gateway. But with protocols like Zigbee, the switch, the sensor, and the controller do not speak to each other. They all have to speak to this gateway. And this gateway is an IT device, meaning you have to get the IT department involved, meaning it's much more complicated to implement. However, if there is a building automation system like BACnet, then you do need a gateway here because there are virtually no, and frankly, I'm not aware of any LED drivers that natively speak BACnet. And so the gateway here, at least from a Bluetooth mesh standpoint, is just a simple protocol translator that's going to translate from BACnet to the Bluetooth mesh wireless protocol. Now let's take a look at a scenario. So let's say that you have two zones or two rooms, and the rooms at this stage do not need to speak to each other. So the two rooms here can be completely independent, where each room will have a switch, a sensor, a controller, and a bank of lights. And then in the other room, you have the same thing. Now, let's consider the scenario that, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years later, the building manager says that now he wants to control all the rooms through a single user interface. As an example, he wants to implement a BACnet building automation system, or he wants to connect everything to the cloud and be able to control everything from anywhere in the world. What does the building manager do to that initial installation? Does he have to start all over? Will it be very expensive to implement this extra functionality? Well, if it's Bluetooth mesh, you actually need to do nothing here. all you need to do is add the gateways after the fact, where the gateways here simply act as a protocol translator from Bluetooth mesh to the cloud or Bluetooth mesh to BACnet. And in this way, with Bluetooth mesh, you can essentially future-proof that initial installation or provide the peace of mind to the building manager or the building owner that even if you're not ready to have a fully integrated system, you can start small, you can start simple. So you're providing that peace of mind and that future-proofing argument that everything's going to be okay, whether you want to stay as a basic system or evolve to something more integrated with the cloud. Now, let's talk a little bit in terms of how Bluetooth mesh works. And Bluetooth mesh works like Twitter. So with Twitter, you have a publisher that publishes a message to a hashtag group address. Then you have subscribers that subscribe to that hashtag group address and is able to view the message. Now with Bluetooth mesh, it's exactly the same thing. You have a switch or a sensor that publishes a message to a group address, which we'll call here the zone kitchen. And then the luminaires subscribe to that group address. So whenever the switch sends the message that I want to turn on, then the luminaires receive that message and then the luminaire is turned on. What's great about this is that you can have multiple publishers to the same group address, as you see here, and the luminaire can subscribe to multiple group addresses. Now let's talk about some benefits of this type of architecture. Let's say that you just did a large room of 100 lights and it's controlled via this switch here. Let's say that 2 months later, the building manager wants to either replace the switch with a switch of a different form factor or a different color, or he just wants to add a switch somewhere else in the room so that you can turn on the lights from somewhere else. All you need to do is add the additional switch, which then publishes to that group address. From the luminaire's perspective, nothing has changed, meaning that you just add the switch and you don't even have to reprogram anything from the luminaire because it's published and subscribed. From the luminaire standpoint, they're still subscribed to kitchen, even though there's an extra switch. And that's what makes it very, very simple to add and remove devices in a Bluetooth mesh network. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you in terms of how this all works compared to something like Zigbee as an example. So with Zigbee, you have a switch that needs to communicate to the gateway, and then the gateway sends the messages to the luminaires to turn on, off, or dim. Whereas, as I mentioned before, in Bluetooth mesh, the switch directly communicates to the luminaire, which makes it much simpler. Now, the next one is where we talk about publish and subscribe. So from a Zigbee standpoint, the gateway needs to be smart enough to be able to do this. But in the case of Bluetooth mesh, if you say a zone or a group address is called the conference room, then from a publish and subscribe standpoint, the switch here sends the message and publishes to conference room, and all of the luminaires that are in the zone conference room will be able to read and react to the message from the switch. And it makes it super simple. So as you add more devices to conference room, they will automatically be able to read the messages from the switch, which enables really simple installations and very low cost installations as well. And finally, the third is the mesh aspect of Bluetooth mesh. So with protocols like Zigbee, if the message that's coming from the switch to the lighting controller here, if the lighting controller is too far away that such that they cannot directly communicate to the lighting fixture, then you need to install router nodes, which are essentially additional gateways in the network. And it's the gateways that forward the message. And so it becomes even more complicated because these are IT are generally IT devices, so you need to strategically place these router gateways so that the message can propagate through a longer distance. But with Bluetooth mesh, every node, every luminaire can be a repeater. And so you don't need any extra hardware. So if it's a large room with a lot of lights, the message will automatically be forwarded by the other luminaires until it reaches the destination. In this case, the zone called conference room. And so with Bluetooth mesh, from an architecture standpoint, it's super simple and straightforward. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about specifics. How does what actually makes Bluetooth mesh work? And there's a key company that has worked very hard to make Bluetooth mesh work, and that company is called Silvair. And Silvair is a software company where the CTO of Silvair is the chair of the Bluetooth SIG, the special interest group that's responsible for defining, maintaining, and publishing the standard. In fact, the standard is largely based on Silvair's technology, although there are many large companies that contributed in developing the standard. And what Silvair has done is that they've created the firmware and the commissioning platform to enable multiple vendors of products, of controllers, of sensors, of wireless LED drivers, of switches, and all of the related technology, whether it's indoor or outdoor, 0 to 10 volt or DALI, it's all enabled by Silvair. And the fact that the Bluetooth mesh standard, it was defined to be interoperable, you can, you're not, it's not that you have to use Silvair, it's just the Silvair platform is the one that I would say is the most proven, but you're not exclusively tied to Silvair, which brings you a lot of freedom when you have a certain project and you want to have choice of different hardware platforms that will work together. Now, the thing that's also important to talk about is the evolution of the LED driver in the sense to enable smart lighting. And so what you're going to see more and more are drivers that are D4i compatible. And what is D4i? Well, it's essentially it's a partnership between the DALI association, so the DIIA, and the Zaga team. And what they've done is that they've created a specification for LED drivers that enable an integrated DALI bus power supply, the auxiliary power-to-power devices, and a memory bank so that you can store the luminaire information in terms of what type of luminaire it is, the luminaire manufacturer, etc. And the driver supports energy reporting and diagnostics and maintenance information. And there's a wide range of LED manufacturers that have released D4i type of drivers for both indoor, industrial, and outdoor. And the number of drivers that are in the design stages to enable D4i technology is just growing. And from a Bluetooth mesh standpoint, Bluetooth mesh has also, or the Bluetooth SIG, the Association of Bluetooth, has also partnered with the D4i group in such that you could have a total solution and without the risk of wondering, oh, was this technology implemented properly? And so there's a formal partnership that made sure that both standards, the Bluetooth mesh standard and D4i, actually work together. And they work very closely to make sure that that happens. And all of this is just to reduce risk, to improve the time to market, and just make it easier to enable these additional features if you want to have the energy monitoring and diagnostics information and all of the benefits of D4i. And all of this, the benefits of working with standards, whether it's D4i or Bluetooth mesh or Zaga specifically from a connector standpoint, is all to make things easier for luminaire manufacturers, installers, and contractors, and very much so the facilities manager as well. So as an example, with the partnership with the DIIA, the Zaga Consortium, and the Bluetooth SIG, in addition to the D4i intra-luminaire protocol, there's also standardized connectors as well, so that if you need to replace the sensor or you need to replace the driver, there are the standard connectors, so that will be a number of sensor controller manufacturers that are going to be able just to switch them off, because there is also the standard at the level of the connector. And what's great about Bluetooth Mesh is that there's an increasing number of companies that are becoming very astute and very experienced in terms of working on Bluetooth Mesh projects. I've outlined a few of them here below, so that if you have a large project and you do not want to invest in a team to actually manage the project for the installation and the commissioning, there are companies all over that are able to do that, because Bluetooth Mesh is a standard. Now, if you want to target the U.S. or the Canadian market from a DLC standpoint, which have a specification for network lighting control, and the network lighting control version 5, Silvair has qualified their technology for that. In addition, they've reached an agreement with the DLC, the Design Light Consortium, such that they can grandfather fixtures and technology solutions, so that you don't have to start from scratch if you want to register your product with the Design Lights Consortium to receive, so that the project can receive the subsidies. Now, when you want to showcase Bluetooth Mesh, for the end customer or for the designers or architects or specifiers, it's very cumbersome to bring in full luminaires in a meeting if you want to show how Bluetooth Mesh works. And so what we've done is that we've created essentially these luminaires on a stick, because whether there are 2 LEDs or 200 LEDs, it's a luminaire. And whether it's powered by USB power or powered by an AC to DC driver, it's a driver. And so what we've done is that we've created these USB sticks for the luminaire, and one for the sensor as well. And we have a switch here to show how everything's going to work. And I'm going to show you a demo in terms of how Bluetooth Mesh actually works in the real world. Because what we're talking about here is, how do we manage the commissioning and installation costs of a project that will have Bluetooth Mesh lighting control, or just lighting control in general? Because what we're trying to do is to minimize the time that installer needs to spend on the project site, because we want to minimize the cost for everyone. And so what Silvair has done from a commissioning standpoint is that they've separated the commissioning process into 2 steps, where step number 1 is done completely remotely. At this stage, the luminaires don't even have to be manufactured. Even the building doesn't have to be constructed at this time. What you do is you set up a project with a Chrome browser, where you can import your floor plan, you create your zones, and then you define how you want the zones to behave. You don't define at this stage how many sensors or controllers or switches, you just define behavior. And then in stage 2 is that the installer goes on site, and all that the installer needs to do is pair the luminaire to the zone. So if the installer knows how to pair his speaker to his phone, he'll know how to pair a luminaire to his zone. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a live demo in terms of how we work with a Silvair project. Now, the thing that's this is the login screen, and the thing that's important to note is that Silvair already supports multiple languages, including Spanish, so that if you're more comfortable using a Spanish interface, that's all possible, and additional languages will be supported throughout the year. And so what you do is you log in on the platform, and if you want to create an additional project, you click here on the plus sign to create a project. What we're going to do in this case, we're going to edit an existing project. And what you need to do here is enter a project name and then the time zone of the project. Because if you're going to have some scheduling, then we need, the system needs to know, what the time zone where the project is going to be located. So once you define the project, you go into the project, and this is where you define the areas, and you can have as many areas as you want up, because the maximum number of nodes in a Bluetooth mesh project is 32,000 nodes. And so that, I have not seen throughout the years from any platform that you will need more than 32,000 nodes in any given project. So in an area, it's a grouping of multiple zones. Essentially, from a practical standpoint, it's about 200 nodes per area. And you can think of this as a floor on a building, or a wing of a building if it's large enough, but it's multiple zones. And then to add an area, you click on here, and what you do is you put in an area name, and then you can upload an image, which is either going to be a JPEG file or a PDF file, and you can or a PNG file, and you can rotate it as well. And then you go into your area, and then it's, this is the image that you had uploaded, and basically this is where you add your zones. And you can move your zones around, and you can add a zone just by clicking, and then you add one of the profiles, or you can create your own profile. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to edit an existing profile. And once you define a profile, then you can actually assign that profile to all of the zones. So you don't need to do this every time. If all the zones you want them to behave in the same way, then you just create the profile once, and then you assign that profile to all of the zones. And so the first thing that you define is, well, what type of zone is it going to be? Is it going to be manual control, meaning only with the switch? And basically, when you press the on button on the switch, you want it to be at 100%. And you want to have some high end and low end trim, which is a DLC requirement. If there is a power failure, when the power gets restored, do you want to keep the lights off? Do you want them restored to the previous state? Or do you want it at a user-defined value? What you can also do is, if you want occupancy sensing as an example, if you know that your zones are going to have occupancy sensors, this is what you need to do to define it. So when you detect occupancy, you want the lights to turn on, and on the fade time here I put in a second, and then I want to stay there for 10 minutes. And I want, if there's occupancy, to say, let's be at 100%. And then after that initial period has elapsed, I'm going to go down to an intermediate level over here, and then I'm going to stay there for another 10 minutes. And then the final stage is when it's vacant. Then basically you want to be at 0 in most cases. But what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to go through every type of scenario. What I'm going to do now is do multiple scenes with scheduling. And so the general spec is the same high end and low end trim, the same power up behavior. And then I'm going to define 4 scenes. And here, over here, if you change the name of the scene here, it's going to change in the tab. And if I called it 100% scene, well, as the name of the scene, I'm going to put it at 100%. My 0% scene, I'm going to put it at 0%. My 50% scene, you guessed it, I'm going to put it at 50%. And then I call this one the sensor scene, because if I don't put this checkbox here, it's like the previous scenes. If I want an automatic scene as well, meaning with sensors, so this is with an occupancy sensor, it's the same as before in terms of the occupancy sensing. And I can make a change here. I wanted to say 80%. If you want with daylight harvesting with lux sensors, then you define your target lux for each of the stages as well. So I made a small change here, and now I'm going to press save. So now that I've made a small change over here, instead of having a checkbox, I have an exclamation point. What this tells me is I've made a change in the virtual world, meaning on the cloud on this website, but it's not reflected in the real world where I have my luminaires and my demos. Now, before I go to my demo, I want to show you how we can do scheduling. And basically over here, I'm going to add a schedule. And you can do scheduling via a gateway, because gateways are optional devices, or scheduling without a gateway where the schedule is in the individual nodes. And then over here, I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to have here called it test schedule. And I want it to be at my 50% scene. I want to fade in 3 seconds. I want it to apply on weekdays, and I want it to apply at say 2 p.m. And then I saved it. And then you can add as many schedules to turn things on, off, to dim at various levels with the scenes that we've defined previously. Okay, so now that I've made all of these changes on the website, I'm going to go to phase 2. So I'm going to plug in my luminaires over here. I'm going to also show you my camera over here. One moment. Let me start this again. Over here. All right, so now I have my camera over here. So let me just go in full screen mode. So over here we have the luminaires on a stick. I've got 3 luminaires on a stick, one, 2, 3, and over here is my sensor. Over here, I actually have a full luminaire, with an actual sensor node over here. And this is the app over here. So the app is basically mirroring what we saw on the website. And if I go here in my FLS project, I see here that's the area. I go into my area, and I see over here that I have an exclamation point. I can actually go into that zone, and then it shows I have all these devices here that need to be reprogrammed, and these are the 4 controllers that I have. So what do? I press here on the Configure All button, and so I'm doing that. I just did that now. And what's going to happen, it's going to take the information from that website, from the cloud, and it's going to load it onto my phone via the internet. And then from my phone via Bluetooth, I'm reprogramming the nodes. So as an installer, there is no risk of me misunderstanding what the project manager had in mind, because it's all happening in the background. And that's all that you need to do here. And then I go to the test tab. And this is where I can go, to my 100% scene, my 0% scene, my 50% scene. If I go back to turn the thing off and I go to my sensor scene. So if I, there's a sensor, sorry, there's the sensor here as well. And over here, I can control the lights all at once. And I can go over here in terms of the individual light levels as well. So one at a time over here. And some of the nodes are tunable white nodes as well. So I can change the color. I'm not sure it's appearing well on the camera, but you can see a little bit of the hue, but the camera's not really picking that up all that much. And then I can just go back to the off stage. Now I also have a switch here, so I can turn. If I go back here as an example, I'll just turn it off, and I can go here, and with the switch, I can turn things on. I can dim, and then I can turn things off like so. Now, how do we remove and add nodes? Well, over here, I'm going to press on here to remove the node, and see the node is flashing, so I know which physical unit I'm going to remove, and I just press remove. And now the node is no longer there, and the default state of an uncommissioned node is fully on. So then when you do install the fixtures and it's not commissioned, the luminaires are going to be on if they're powered. So how do I add nodes to the project? Well, I click over here to this plus, and then I tap on here, and now it's flashing again. So I know, oh, that's the one that I'm going to add to the zone, and I just press add. And again, what it's going to do is going to go fetch the information from that website. It's going to load it onto my phone via the internet, and then from my phone via Bluetooth, it's going to reprogram the nodes to make it very, very simple. Again, no risk of miscommunication of the behavior is not going to be the behavior that the project manager had in mind. And that's it. So now it's done, and so everything is done. Now you take this switch here. So this switch is an Enotion BLE switch. It's not Bluetooth mesh, but Silver is what they're able to do is when the switch hits one or communicates with one of the nodes, that nodes will translate BLE to Bluetooth mesh to make it work. So I'm just going to show you how we do that with an Enotion switch. So I'm going to disable the switch. So now the switch no longer works. And how do we enable the switch? There's a QR code in the back. And I only need to do this once because, again, it's publish and subscribe. That switch is now communicating to the FLS schedule zone. And now I can, every node is now controlled via the switch. And so if I add additional nodes to this zone, it will automatically be controlled by the switch without having to do anything else. And that really is the power of Bluetooth mesh. And it really does not have to be more complicated than that. It's very, very, very straightforward. So let me close this over here. And then if you refresh the screen, then that exclamation point is gone, and now you have the checkbox again, so that you can confirm that everything is okay. Now going back to the presentation over here, everything that I've done so far, I've done without a gateway. So there was no gateway for commissioning, for controlling, for anything. But you can optionally add gateways for cloud services. And so Silver does offer cloud services so that you'll be able to do remote system reconfiguration. You can do gateway-based scheduling. You can have information in terms of the energy consumption, space utilization in terms of leveraging the occupancy information, maintenance and monitoring services, emergency lighting services, and even BACnet and automatic demand response will be possible. And so just to show you how the interface works from a Silver project standpoint, I have a second project here which has a gateway involved. And when you go into the project as well, you can go to the occupancy, and you see here in this conference room when it was occupied. There's still not many people going into that conference room in our company. You can then we have the power consumption information as well, and you can even have various dashboards as well, so that if you put in a baseline of power consumption, whether how much money that you're saving over the course of time. And you can when you edit the project, if you go to energy monitoring, you could put in your energy or your energy pricing. You can do your baseline, or you can actually calculate the baseline on a per fixture and zone level as well. And so you've got a lot of flexibility. And again, the gateway is not controlling the network. It's just a protocol translator between Bluetooth mesh and the cloud. So it's very, very, very simple to set up. And as well, if you need your own logo and your own app and your own colors, there is a path that Silver can support in terms of doing a co-branded app or a branded app where you can have your own logo and your own company colors. Obviously, there is a one-time fee and an annual maintenance fee, but if you see that as an advantage, there is a path towards enabling this. And so, from a summary standpoint, in terms of what Bluetooth mesh is, it's an interoperable standard. It is a very resilient mesh network. You can directly address the nodes and sensors. It's extremely secure. In fact, Silver is already certified with a few third-party security platforms. You can have low-cost components because Bluetooth mesh is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. No gateways are required. The commissioning is the simplest that I've seen on the market. Bluetooth mesh natively supports D4i compatibility. It's supported by all smartphones. You can do over-the-air updates, and you can enable scalable solution from something small and simple to something to a much larger projects with full integration with the cloud to make everything work seamlessly. And so this will end the presentation. If there are questions or comments, if you want to, say your questions in Spanish, we have Roberto Espinoza that will be happy to translate them, and vice versa. So very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Wonderful presentation. Could you please give us a short and brief explanation how in-ocean switches operate?
Sure, no problem. So in-ocean switches are self-powered switches. There's no battery, no power in them, and basically it's the kinetic energy of pressing on the switch. So the act of pressing the button generates enough energy to send the wireless signal. In-ocean switches have been around for forever, and so if the building manager is extremely energy sensitive and does not even want to spend a single microwatt of energy on switches, in-ocean switches are completely self-powered by the power of your finger. It's a very interesting and widely used technology for switches. And although the in-ocean switch is not officially part of the Bluetooth mesh standard, Silver decided to implement it and provide the code in terms of how to implement it within a Bluetooth mesh framework to any company as well. So even though it's not part of the standard, they've made it open as well.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. To all participants, I would like to stress that there is, on the questions and answers, there is a link that we would appreciate if you would please follow that link and fill the information. With that information, we're going to send you the recording of this presentation, and we can also answer any questions and answers that you may have in the future. Now, if anybody has any question for Patrick in English or for Roberto in Spanish, please, the floor is open.
Yes, Daniel, we have a question in the chat. The, the first is the devices are supported by KNX software or can only be configured by Silver software.
So, so Silver has a very elaborate API, meaning instruction sets, so that you can bridge between various protocols, whether it's BACnet to the Silver, and frankly, there is no reason why KNX could not be also supported via this, because Silver has made their a broad range of all the API commands in terms of turning on the lights, turning off the lights, measuring or sending the information on the power consumption or the occupancy levels. So although right now I do not believe that there is something available off the shelf that can bridge, but the technology between KNX and Bluetooth mesh, but the building blocks to enable that are definitely there. And really, it's what we're trying to do with Bluetooth mesh. It is a disruptive technology, but we fully understand that for any disruptive technology, we have to embrace the existing technology that's already there, whether it's KNX or BACnet. But over time, the belief is that everything is going to be cloud-based. But again, the building blocks to enable existing building automation system is already there.
Okay, we have another question. What happens if one device is too far from the other? How much distance support Bluetooth mesh?
Okay, so the distance is a very interesting question. Now, the issue is the hops, right? So when you have, if you have to go to very long distances, well, as long as there is a node in between, then it'll be able to forward the message to the next node until it reaches the final destination. Now, in terms of the length between one node and the other, that really depends on the hardware. Now, it generally speaking, 50 feet is fully is no problem. 100 feet, depending on the hardware, is no problem. We've seen solutions where 200 feet is part of the specification. Now, one thing to note is that there will be some major innovation in Bluetooth mesh by the end of the year or early next year, and that is Bluetooth long range. So BLE 5 already supports long range, and what I mean by long range, I mean as much as a kilometer long range. However, the Bluetooth mesh standard has not yet implemented that technology in Bluetooth mesh, but the Bluetooth SIG, the special interest group, is working on supporting the Bluetooth long range. And so over the course of over the next year, range should no longer be a question to anyone. However, you do need to have the chip or the hardware that supports Bluetooth 5.
Okay. The other is, are Android phones supported?
So as of today, iOS phones are supported by Silver. However, by the end of the year, both Android and iPhones are going to be supported by Silver. What Silver is doing is actually they're completely re-architecting their app such that after they do these major changes, then what they're doing is they're building their apps now with just a single platform in mind. And so after they do that initial relaunch of their app, then all further app developments will be Android and iOS at the same time. And there's a few reasons why many Bluetooth mesh companies have initially focused on iOS. And I do realize that not every region is has the Apple being dominant, but the major reason is because the Bluetooth radio in iOS devices like iPhones and iPads are similar in quality, and the phones work in the same way. Whereas for Android, the quality of the radio and the implementation has a lot of variation. What Silver wanted to first do is just make sure that everything works, is robust, is essentially bulletproof. And the way to do that first, and the easiest way, was to leverage iOS. Also, Android, from implementing all the requirements of security that Bluetooth Mesh requires, did take longer to implement that. But now everything is done, and hopefully by the end of the year, the Android phones will be supported.
Thank you, Patrick. We have also another question. It says, how can I add the flat diagram in the platform? Do I need to upload it, or can I draw it?
In terms of the floor plan, if that's a question, yeah, you can draw it your own and take a picture with your phone, or take a and then as long as it's a JPEG file or a PNG file or a PDF, then you can upload the floor plan.
Okay, thank you.
Was that the question? I may have misunderstood it.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Another one says, can Bluetooth Mesh be integrated with Zigbee or S-Wave systems such alarm or cameras? Yeah,
so Bluetooth Mesh is its own technology, its own platform. Now, with the power of the cloud and gateways, in theory, yes, it's possible to bridge any two protocols together. And to be honest, this is where Convergia has been doing this for many years, in terms of having the ability to integrate two separate networks together, and that's really the value that one of the values that Convergia provides to the market. But natively, no, it's completely separate. It's a completely separate radio. Now there are radios out there that that do have both a 802.15.4 radio, which is the radio type that Zigbee uses, and a Bluetooth radio. It's in theory it's possible, but you would have to do things that are well outside of the standard.
Great.
And again, just to point out, the key thing with Zigbee is that you need a gateway, and the gateway in a Zigbee network is managing the network, where with Bluetooth Mesh you can have a gateway, but the gateway for Bluetooth Mesh is just a protocol translator to to the cloud or to other protocols. But the gateway in Bluetooth Mesh does not manage the network. It's all self-managed in the nodes themselves.
Thank you. Enrique Mora asked us two questions. I will let you know both, right? Is there any possible interference trouble with the other Bluetooth devices in the area? And the other one says, is there any licenses required to get all the features and services?
Okay, so from an interference standpoint, so within Bluetooth Mesh, the BLE protocol is actually inside a Bluetooth Mesh. So therefore it's meant to be interoperable, because at the end of the day, when I use my phone does not speak Bluetooth Mesh. My phone speaks BLE. And the way that Bluetooth Mesh works is that the first node sees, oh, that's a BLE message. I'm going to translate the BLE message to Bluetooth Mesh and then that just works. And to be honest, why is BLE used? BLE is basically an extremely reliable wireless wire, essentially. When we think of BLEs, it's just going to work. Whereas for Wi-Fi, it's not, it's disappointing, but it's not a complete surprise if the Wi-Fi is down. But with BLE, you expect it to work as reliably as a wire absolutely every time. So the fact there cannot be any interference with BLE or Bluetooth with Bluetooth mesh, because BLE is actually in the Bluetooth mesh standard. And can you repeat the second question?
Of course. Is there any possible interference trouble with the other Bluetooth devices in the area?
Yeah, that I answered. It was the other question.
And says here, is there any licenses required to get all the features and services?
Okay, so from the Silvair, how Silvair works, for the cloud services, yes, there is an annual fee for the cloud services. Comparing to standard IoT services that are offered in the market, it's extremely low cost compared to standard IoT services. So there is an annual fee for cloud services, meaning with the gateway-based services. However, for gateway-less services, there is no annual fee. The app is completely free. What there is, however, there is an activation fee, but that's really more or less embedded into the price of the hardware. We do invoice that separately, but in some cases we can put it as one price. So when you say, if you purchase the products online, you just get one price, and it's basically a one-time fee at around the same time as you buy the hardware. But there's without a gateway, there is no annual fee or subscription fee. It just works.
Great, thank you. Another one that we have here is, can the cloud manage be installed on premise appliances?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. Can the cloud manage be installed on premise appliances?
So right now, the way that Silvair is architecting their cloud-based solution is that you will have to do the initial setup on site, but then you'll be able to reconfigure or change the settings remotely on the cloud from the cloud via the gateway. So there is an element of being able to maintain and make adjustments to the setup completely remotely. But that first time when you're setting up the project, in terms of that stage 2, when that installer pairs the luminaire to the zone, initially that needs to be done at the premises, at the project site.
Okay, the last one will be, are there outdoor lighting nodes?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We have outdoor lighting nodes available on the market that are just controllers. Some have PIR sensors, some have microwave sensors. Those are available in various form factors. Some have a half-inch knockout that really where you can essentially connect that to the side of the fixture. Some of them are leveraging the Zaga Book 18, so that it is compatible with these twist locks type of approaches. But yes, there are plenty of outdoor rated products, and where we've seen a lot of projects are, say, for outdoor parking. In terms of roadway lighting, that I would wait until Bluetooth long range is available. But for for parks, for walkways and for outdoor parking, floodlights, outside of a building, absolutely, the products are available on the market, and obviously we have these products, and would be yeah, there is you can, if you have a project, you can immediately leverage available products.
Okay, then thank you so much, Patrick, Roberto, for your assistance. That will be all the questions that we have from the attendees. Thank you so much for all of them. I will let that Patrick to say your final comments, as well as Daniel.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for attending. Again, Bluetooth Mesh has been available for many years. There are many large and small companies that are leveraging this technology right now, and I really hope that the message that lighting control, particularly with Bluetooth Mesh, can really be simple and straightforward, and Future and Convergia would be happy to provide any additional support and to answer any questions that you have. And if you have some questions for a project, again, we're ready and able to provide some support. So thank you for your time.
Patrick, I have another new question here that I think is important. Please, if you can solve it. It says, which type of security is used? MQTT with SSL?
So there's so if you say MQTT, that's at the gateway level, right? MQTT is the protocol to go to the cloud, but Bluetooth Mesh again is not self-contained. So when I put here, there are 3 types of security keys with Bluetooth Mesh. So because you've asked that question, so let me answer it. So the first type of key is basically the overall project key. So you need a network key, right? So with the network key, you need that to access the network. Within that network key, you can also have subnetworks. So as an example, if you're doing a hotel, you want every hotel room to have a subnetwork key, so that it is impossible for a person in one room to control the lights in the next room. And by the way, when you set up a Silvera project, every area will have its own subnetwork key. So that's how you separate it. So if you do say a hotel, each hotel room would be its own area, and then that way it's impossible for one person to control the room in the other. Next, there's the application key. The application key is that, let's say as an example, you're using Bluetooth Mesh to control the lights, and then you want to use Bluetooth Mesh, eventually for controlling HVAC. So you want to provide the options so that some people can control the lights over here, and then you want the janitor to be able to control other things, or the building manager to control other things. And then basically there's a key at the node level as well. And this is very important. So let's say that you have 100 fixtures, and one of the fixtures for whatever reason needs to be replaced. Well, what we want to make sure is that if you throw that device in the garbage, what we don't want is someone who is very clever takes the luminaire in the garbage and uses that to try to get into the network. So once you do that, basically it's when you remove a device from the network, all of the individual node keys get updated as well, and all of this is happening in the background. To be very honest, Bluetooth Mesh was 80% of the effort in Bluetooth Mesh, in creating Bluetooth Mesh, was dedicated to security. It is 100% secure, and Silvera has also qualified their technology with various international IoT security standards. in addition to the very high security standards that Bluetooth Mesh also supports with the three types of security keys. So it is inherently secure.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Thank you very much, Patrick, for this presentation and your time. Thank you to all the attendees. I would like to remind you guys that Convergia is capable of providing a turnkey solution on Bluetooth mesh control with Future Lighting Solutions and Future Electronics. We are a Silvair distributor, so we're here to help. Please go into the link on the questions and answers, fill that link and fill the form so we can get in touch with you and provide you the presentation, the recorded presentation, and also a follow-up and any part of interest that you may have. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and do take care.